Welcome everyone to Ark Survival Evolved's newest DLC, Extinction. Ark Extinction was just released a couple of days ago as of this recording, and so I spent a little bit of time in there, and in this video today we're going to be talking about some of the things that I wish I would have known and had to learn the hard way. So we're going to be talking about some resources, we're going to be talking about how to obtain them, where to get them, and some basics like that as you get started in the game. So first of all, as we look around, we are inside the ruined city. If we pull up the map, you can see we're here basically in the center of the map, and all of the area surrounding me in all directions is the ruined city. Now, this is a great place to get started because the dinos are kind of sparse in large portions of this area of the map, and generally you're okay as far as the difficulty level in this area. Once you get beyond the walls of the city, though, it becomes a much different story. So what we're going to be spending our time on in today's video is what you can obtain while you're still within the city, as you know, when you're starting a new game or sort of intermediate portion of the game. So, as always, you're going to start out in Ark. You're going to see these bushes where you can obtain berries and fiber and so on. And of course, you're going to see trees scattered throughout and your basic rock formations. So all of that is normal to Ark. Nothing particularly different about that. However, as you work your way throughout the city, you're going to see some crystal formations. Now, those of you who are familiar with aberration, this is going to be really nothing new for you. We're going to pull out our pick. And you see that we get stone, fragmented green gems, and crystal. And of course, these gems are going to be based on where you are. Right now, we're getting the green gems because we are in a sort of a basic beginner type area. Okay, so we'll bring up our inventory and we'll get rid of all that stuff out of there. So that's where you're going to get your crystal. Now, also, as you move around the beginner area, you're going to notice a few of these. However, there are not very many. This is one that is not quite as rich as some of the others that you will see, but I've actually started to build a base right over here near it just for this reason. They're fairly sparse, and you'll find them more often around the edges of the ruined city. So once you get to these, you know you've got a great area for metal. But that's not all, because as you're walking through the city, you're going to notice a lot of these street lights. Well, at the beginning of the game, if you use your stone pick, you can harvest crystal and element dust from this. Now, we're going to get into the element dust a little bit later on and what it's used for. But then as you get a little bit farther along and you're into the metal tools, if we come over to another street light, you see that not only are we getting element dust and crystal, we also got some scrap metal. So if we pull open our inventory here, you can see the scrap metal here. Now the question remains, okay, well, that's all well and good, but what do we do with scrap metal and what is it used for? Well, the great thing is scrap metal can be smelted and refined in a refining forge just the same as your basic metal that we're used to dealing with. So if we come back over to our makeshift base here that we've started building, we'll walk right in. And if we open up our refining forge, you can see here, this is the S Plus version of the refining forge. And you can see I've already got a whole bunch of scrap metal in here, and it refines down into scrap metal ingots. And these can be used interchangeably with the basic metal ingots that we're used to. So this is a great thing, particularly early on in the game, in order to greatly enhance your production of metal, simply because, as opposed to what I've noticed with the metal nodes, which is that you get 2 to 1, for every 2 metal you get 1 ingot, it's a 1 to 1 ratio with the scrap metal. So as you obtain scrap metal, either through the methods that we just did, or if you have a different method that we'll talk about here in just a moment, you can significantly boost your production of metal and quantity of metal very early on in the game. All right, so that's going to do it for this part. Now we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about where you're going to get some of the other elements, such as element itself, element dust. We're going to talk about electronics, as well as polymer. As you're walking around the ruined city, you're going to see several of these located in various spots. You can see there's another one right over there. But if you walk up to these are city terminals, and if you access the inventory, you can see that we can turn element dust into element. We can craft scouts, and we can also craft enforcers. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about the enforcers here in just a moment. But there you see, once again, we're going to use the element dust to turn it into element shards. And then we've got a couple of crafting recipes for unstable element shards, as well as unstable element itself. So you can come in here and craft a couple of things. Now, these are very low level. The scouts are very interesting. You'll see them flying around. Let's see if there's one or two. Yeah, there you go. Over in the distance, you can see 4 or 5 of them flying around. I haven't been able to kill any of those, which is, I find, kind of odd. I can hit them. I can attack them. They have very, very low health. In fact, if we use our omnocular, you can see it has 3 health for a level 32 and the same for a level 16. So they have extremely low health, but I've hit them multiple times and it doesn't seem to kill them. They just continue to fly around. They do not attack you. I've had them follow me for a little while, but they never really seem to do anything other than fly around. So not a whole lot to worry about there. However, the difference is if you were to create one on your own, and there you can see the crafting requirements. You need crystal, electronics, element dust, and metal ingots. All of that except for electronics, we already know how to get those, and we'll talk about electronics a little bit later in the video coming up in the next segment. But you can come in and craft one of those and then use it basically as a flying drone that you can remotely operate and basically use it as your eyes and ears without having to go into certain dangerous areas. So keep that in mind as you're moving around the city. That's what these particular terminals are used for. All right, the next thing you need to be aware of is these guys and these guys as you move around the beginning areas within the city. So for the most part, being within the city is not terribly dangerous. There's always some danger around from things like dinos or raptors that we're used to in the game. But here we've got a couple of new units. Now I've got the God mode on, and they're going to leave me alone, so we can walk up pretty close to them. But these are called enforcers. Now the enforcers are really good for resources. You don't want to take these on very early game. You're going to need some armor and some equipment, preferably at least a pike and a decent amount of melee damage. But once you get to that point, you can start to come in and deal with these guys. So we're going to pull out our sword here. There you go. Now you notice 2 things happen when we kill this guy. First of all, we're going to take out, well, if we can get it to, there we go. We get oil, electronics, element dust, and scrap metal. So there's that scrap metal again, and another great way of getting metal early on, or fairly early on in the game. We also get electronics, oil, which is huge. I took quite a while and flew around trying to find oil nodes and was not able to find any. I'm not sure that we can say that there's not any at all on the map because it's a huge map and we're just at the beginning portions of trying to discover all of it. But I was not able to find anywhere remotely close to the beginning area or intermediate areas. So oil, this is where you're going to get oil. Then, of course, we get our element dust. Now, element dust can be used for a few purposes. And, of course, we got some crystal in there as well. But if we look down here, you can see he's also dropped a blueprint. Now, this is a blueprint for an unassembled enforcer. And you can see it's level 14. The level on these things, I've noticed, is always equal to or around within a few points of the level of creature you just killed. So for this enforcer we killed, I believe it was a level 14, and you can see we have one remaining that we can craft. So every time you kill one of these enforcers, you're going to get a blueprint. And the quality of that blueprint, you're going to get anything from primitive to ramshackle and so on up the line, as we're used to with Ark. And that's going to determine the strength and quality of the enforcer that you're able to build, as well as the crafting requirements that you're going to need. You can see here on the right hand side, element dust, we're going to need 500. So we're going to have to kill about 10 of these in order to get that amount of element dust, unless we go about some of the other methods that we talked about, which is the street lights and so on. We're going to need 60 metal ingots. Again, that shouldn't be all that big of a deal. The polymer, 30. Now we're going to talk about how to get polymer here in just a moment. But then we're going to need 50 crystal and 20 oil. So we now know how to get all of those very simply, except for the polymer. And we're going to talk about that. So we're going to go ahead and pick up this blueprint. But it always drops that next to the remains. So be sure to pick that up. Even if you don't necessarily intend to build all of them, they're always handy to have around, just in case you want to build an enforcer army a little bit later on. So again, as we move through here, this is getting toward the edge of the city. And if I pull up our map as we're moving along, you can see that we are getting very close to the edge. And in fact, the arrow is very soon going to be almost out of the initial starter city area. Okay, and that's going to bring us to the defense units. We see that right in front of us. Now, I'm not sure if this is a bug or if it's intended to be this way, but these defense units, they're very aggressive, and you can see they're attacking. They also have the ability to move around by rolling. The good thing there is, while they're rolling, they cannot attack. So that's good for you. You'll definitely want to avoid these early game. As you can see, they're pretty powerful there as they're fighting against this stego. But the weird thing about these is they don't drop anything for me right now. Regardless of what tool I try to use, whether it's a pick or the axe or whatever it is, I'm not able to get any drops from them after I kill them. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure, again, if that is a bug, but as soon as they die, not very long after that, they generally disappear. You can see one here. Let's see if we can hit it, but we're not getting anything. So that's what I've had happen to me on every occasion so far, whether we're talking about using the pick or the axe and so on, or even the sword or a pike. Now over here, you notice that we've got some other formation. We'll hop over here. We hit this, and you can see this is your basic stone and crystal that you're going to get. Also, you notice over here, we've got some more metal. And again, now that we're getting over here close to the edge of the city, there is a very rich metal node right here. So a very good area. And then we've got an explorer node there that we're not going to get into right now. But as we move toward the edge, this is where the danger starts to ramp up quite a bit. And this is going to answer the question of how do we get polymer in this game. So it's pretty apparent to me early on as we get started and have the initial hours and days with this Extinction DLC that the developers did not intend for us to travel around and try to find oil nodes and metal nodes. They intended for us to get these crafting items by killing creatures and harvesting creatures for the most part. So here's where we're going to notice a very distinct change. Now you notice just as we walk outside the city walls here, harsh conditions are going to make our food go down much quicker. And we also notice another distinction, and that is we're getting into your normal creatures that you would normally see. There's the Megatherium. Then we get outside the walls and you get into the corrupted dinos. Now these corrupted dinos are a little different than what you're used to. So normally you would run up on a trike here or a pteranodon and you wouldn't think anything of it because they're normally passive toward you until you attack them. Same thing with the stegos and so on. That's not the case with the corrupted dinos. All the corrupted dinos, regardless of their species, are aggressive toward the player, and all non-corrupted dinos constantly. So here you can see Carno, a normal Carno fighting against corrupted Triceratops. You've got Pteranodons fighting over here, corrupted versions versus your standard version. So as you're moving around, make sure that you're ready for it once you get out into this area. There's also a gas bag flying around up there. Those also get attacked very readily by the corrupted dinos as well. But if we sort of, let's find ourselves an easy target. Let's go look at one of these dilos. All right, first things first, let's go ahead and get rid of everything out of our inventory. Okay, now we're going to walk up on, hopefully we can find, there we go, there's a dilo right here. So any of the corrupted dinos, this is a very low level one, so we'll be able to take care of him really quickly. And I'm going to use our axe, and you notice we get meat and hide, which you're used to, but we also get a new item, the corrupted nodule. Now this corrupted nodule, and you can see it's got a spoil timer on it of 30 minutes. And of course, now all of these quantities and length of time on the spoilers and so on, all of that is going to be dependent upon what you use for your various multipliers on the server or in your single player game. I'm in a single player game right now. So keep that in mind when you see that we just got 3 corrupted nodules there. You may get more, you may get less, depending on the creature and the level of that creature. But these corrupted nodules are great as polymer. These are polymer substitutes. They essentially work as organic polymer because they do have a spoil timer, and I'm sure the mods will come in and allow you to greatly extend this timer, but this is where you're going to get polymer. So what we've talked about in today's video is basically how you're going to get all of the resources necessary both at the beginning and the intermediate portions of the game once you get into the metal type of tools and weapons, as well as the electronics and polymer. So you're not going to be sitting around crafting a lot of this from a fabricator and so on. You're going to spend your time in large part obtaining this by tracking down either the corrupted animals in the cases of your polymer or polymer substitute. And then you're also going to travel around and you're going to be looking for these enforcers in order to obtain things like electronics and element shards and so on. Now, the last couple of things I do want to point out in today's video is if we come in and only use the extinction, you notice that we have some things in here. You've got delivery crates. Now, these are sort of a risk-reward idea because a delivery crate will allow you to, if you have the gas bag bladder, it's pretty basic to take care of, and this is going to enable you to send resources across the map to a certain location. Now, the problem with that is if you're on a multiplayer server, then other players can shoot these down and obtain their contents. Okay, I wasn't sure exactly what that was coming up behind us there. Then we've got the dino leash. There have actually been mods that have been able to do this same sort of function, but the leash keeps your dinos from running away, attacking things or defending themselves. Then we've got your various saddles. You've got taxidermy bases where you can actually display your kills. The gotcha saddle. Now the gotcha is located a little bit deeper within the map. Again, like Aberration, there are many levels to this particular map. And as you get on some of the lower levels, you'll find the gotchas, which are basically large sloth creatures, and they are great for things like pearls as they create resources. Okay, then we've got cryopods, which enable you to capture a creature sort of like a Pokeball, basically, and carry it around and then bring the creature back whenever it's needed. And then we get to a couple of things that we can do along the way with that element dust that we saw. So with 10 element dust, we can craft an unstable element shard. And then with 1,000 element dust, we can craft unstable element itself. And then along the way, we have the tech bridge, which I've actually not had a chance to make one of these yet, but they're supposed to enable you to traverse large distances with a makeshift bridge there. And then we finally get down into the mechs, but that is much later in the game, where you can make the mechs, and you can see here we've got cannon shells and rockets and all sorts of things to do with our mech. But that's going to do it for our beginning video. So hopefully this helps you out in finding and locating not only the resources, but the dinos you're going to need to kill in order to harvest these resources early and intermediate game. Thank you very much for joining me, and stay tuned for more Ark Extinction coverage here at Knee Pit Gaming.